Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the afternoon show, The Hide. My name's Phil Stepney, and thanks so much for joining us today. Some of you folks on Facebook, YouTube, as well as the Africam website. As always, this is a great part of the day. We're going to spend the next hour or so having a look at all the different cameras, see what's happening this afternoon. There's some beautiful light out today. Doesn't look like very many clouds. I thought we'd start off here at Olifants. It's quite nice to actually see these hippos. They seem to be right in front of the camera. They're often showing us their backsides on the edge of the islands. Wow, look at that. Beautiful big yawn. Always quite entertaining to watch them actually moving around. You often just see them having a nap in the water, mimicking a rock. But at this time of day, late afternoon, they do tend to get a little bit more active. There's an oxpecker just landed on the back of that one. So let's spend a bit of time with them. There's no rush as usual. Beautiful late afternoon sunlight on them. Anyone on the Africam website, you can take snapshots. Great opportunity. Let's see if we can see another yawn. As it is in our case, it can be quite contagious, a yawn. Especially late afternoon, you often find that they start to yawn, and that's literally what they're doing. They're just yawning, they're waking up. Let's see if we can hear them as well. They have been quite vocal. See at what point that oxpecker gets knocked off. Looks like those two smaller ones are irritating what I think looks like a female. It is quite a big female. Maybe that's a bull on the far right hand side. It's quite tricky to tell the difference between male and female when they're in the water. The bulls definitely have thicker necks. Generally, their sizes are much bigger. You can see those folds in the skin, really soft, or relatively speaking, soft, malleable, jelly bean-like skin. Little ears. It's quite interesting. Such a big animal, small ears. And if you look at their nostrils as well, they're just little holes in the end of their nose there. They're not really big, fat, wet noses. Sometimes if you look at things like wildebeest or buffalo, they've got these big, wet, quite sensitive noses, really reliant on sense of smell. The one thing that hippos have that's quite large is their eyes. If you look at their eyes, they're really big. So when they come out at night, oh, look at that barrel roll. Literally a barrel. But yeah, when they move around at night, covering ground, feeding, looking for grass, their main sense is sight. They don't really rely so much on sense of hearing and sense of smell. Looks like they've had enough of us laughing at them. Okay. We're going to go across to to Tembe while those hippos move downstream. We'll keep an eye on them. Maybe they come back. But yeah, we also have something that I don't remember being too common on a regular basis. We did see a wildebeest yesterday at the waterhole, but here we have a small family unit, full small herd. Now in the southern parts of South Africa, or south of East Africa, should I say, these wildebeest, they don't get into huge herd numbers, maybe 20 or 30. So this is probably for this area a normal size herd. Sometimes at Tau we do see slightly larger herds. So this is the brindle gnu, or blue wildebeest. They've got two little calves with them, lightly colored, light brown. And one's lying down. Look to me like they're about 4 or 5 months old, maybe. That would be a push, but they, from this summer season, quite vulnerable at this stage. Yesterday it did seem like the lions were around the pride that we see on a regular basis around Tau. I wonder where they are right now. That would be a good snack, sorry to say. But nice to see this herd. Beautiful markings down the neck and into the shoulders. Those are the brindles. That's where it gets its name from. Quite a large animal in size. Like a medium-sized horse. There's also that young Inyala that actually walked straight through the waterhole earlier. We've just gone past it, but I'm sure we'll get back to it. Seems to either be lost its mother, or maybe it's in the woodland, but that would also be quite a good target for a pride of lions. Pretty easy. Quite interesting. No elephants yet. Beautiful long shadows. There's that Inyala. For that Inyala's sake, I hope those lines have moved off. As the sun starts to set and the evening starts to arrive, it could get to be quite a scary place for that youngster. Let's follow it for a bit, see where it goes. Looks like it's heading back to the waterhole. Maybe it'll cross it again. Hope it doesn't get stuck. No, giving that a second thought, good. Really not too sure where to be going. Sometimes in Nyala, mothers will leave their youngsters, but that's usually when they're much smaller. I would say in the first 3 weeks or so, 4 weeks of their life. They sometimes stash them in the leaf foliage in a woodland, or at this age, I think it's quite unusual for this youngster to be on its own. I'd say this animal is about 2, maybe 3 months of age. Wouldn't say more than that. Definitely quite a tricky position to be in. It's something to keep an eye out, see if the lions arrive a bit later. Don't know if any of you remember, not too long ago we saw an Inyala of a similar age get taken out by a lioness here at this waterhole, so we'll need to be careful. Should go join the wildebeest for safety in numbers. I just want to stick around at this camera for a while. I just want to see where this young Inyala goes. Again, it's a window into a world of nature. Things have been doing what they do out there forever and a day. And it's quite fascinating to sit back and watch things unfold, see how things get on with their environment. Sometimes not so easy to take in what one sees, but one does need to remember that they're fully wild environments. No contrived rules or regulations as to what you can and can't do out there. It's essentially purely driven by instinct. Seems to be interested in going across to the wildebeest. And somehow I think understands they're not one of its kind. I guess the best result would be as if the mother came out the bush. Best result for us and the little one. Remember, folks, if you have any questions, you can send them through either on Facebook or YouTube or any of the platforms, AFRICAM website. It's always nice to interact with you guys, see where you are in the world. Sounds like some European beaters in the background. Some weavers, what look like weavers. It's not 100% clear, but there's a bit of yellow at the back and the left of the screen. Maybe they're picking up some nesting material. Hi Anna, thanks for joining us from Sweden. I guess it's pretty cool where you are. We often discuss the weather, and it's pretty warm here at Tembe, I would say. 35 degrees or so, maybe 95% humidity, quite tropical. So I hope you're warm in your home. And if you do go out, put a jacket on. Looks like that Inyala's taken a bit of a break behind the palm tree there. That's okay, we'll keep an eye on it as usual. I just want to go across to Naledi Dam. And a wonderful scene here of lots of impalas having a late afternoon feed around the waterhole. Just a peaceful scene. Let's have a watch and a listen. Deborah, I'm not sure. There's quite a few birds calling, but there's emerald spotted wood doves that are quite constant at Tembe. Also red-eyed doves. We'll go back to Tembe and have a good listen shortly. Jumbo, Victoria. Take it you've been across to East Africa. Jumbo's hello in Swahili, for those that haven't. Okay, and all these impala look in great condition. Keeping the grass nice and short in this area. Not a bad system at the moment. Good rains, lots of animals feeding on the grass, promoting the growth. And that should leave a lot of food for the winter months. So there's some more questions with regards to the temperature here. So right now in most of the areas, in fact all of the places where we have cameras are, I would say definitely over 30, 35 degrees, so close to 100. And it'll stay like that until maybe even March. The mornings are relatively cool. Again, relatively cool, probably 25 degrees, maybe 80, 85. Some days can go over 40 degrees, so I don't know, pushing 110 or so. It's really hot out there. Any bit of breeze, any bit of cloud cover is always welcome. Those of you coming from Canada and places like that far north where you get down to minus 20. So I've got even more bad news for you. Even in our midwinter, it might go down to minus 2. Relatively warm days in winter, 20 degrees maybe, quite pleasant. So if you get too cold that side of the world, come down south. We're waiting for you. Bring your sun cream. Just going to keep panning slowly across to the waterhole itself. See if any of the impalas are having a drink. One of the things you always got to bear in mind while watching the cameras, either when there's nothing there or if we're watching a peaceful scene like this, things can change pretty quickly. One often assumes, and it's not a bad assumption, that there's no predator around, seeing as these impala are quite relaxed. But it's not impossible that they're actually being hunted by a predator, and in that case, the predator would make sure that it doesn't get caught out and make sure that it doesn't get seen until the very last minute. It's not that unusual to watch the scene change in front of our eyes. You know, if a leopard arrives or a cheetah, it will be absolute chaos. Phyllis, I'm not sure if you're referring to that area where the impalas are drinking from. It's not a well as such. It is where water gets pumped into first, and then it trickles over into the main water hole on the left. Okay, so we've just gone back across to Olifants. These hippos are back in view. We might return, I'm sure we will return to the impalas, but I just like to take this opportunity to have a good look at these hippos. Beautiful, beautiful afternoon sunlight. Those two youngsters, when I say youngsters, I reckon they're about a year old or so, maybe 10 months, those two. They seem to be quite active. Every now and then irritating the adults. There's a movement of irritation. Get off my backside. Youngster having a little rest on the rump of its mother or aunt. You hear the black-collared barbet calling in the background. If anyone does have one of the many birding apps out there, it's quite nice to have a look at the bird, listen to its call. Some of them are really beautiful, like the black-collared barbet. Really good-looking bird. Let's see if it calls again. Hey Margaret, glad you enjoy watching the cams, bringing you back some great memories, no doubt. So nice to see them active. You don't often see them almost playing around today. You don't often see them doing that. They're normally saving a lot of energy just lying around in the water. But this group seemed to be quite content with the sunshine, flowing water. I guess these days they don't need to cover too much ground. You know, the food that they'll feed on, the grasses in the evenings, they won't need to go too far. So they'll be able to hang on to that energy quite nicely. Okay, so we've just gone across from Olifants River. I just wanted to have a look at these birds. Looks like a Burchell starling on the left and a European roller on the right-hand side there. Sorry, that starling could actually be a Cape glossy starling. It doesn't really have the long tail. Beautiful sheen on that starling. So that's iridescent color as the sun catches the light on the feathers. Essentially, the scales, they reflect back the shiny light. Whereas the color on the European roller is true color. And in this case, I'd say out of all the rollers, although it is very beautiful, he's the least colorful. That soft blue. It does have a bit of a darker shade on its rump. But you don't often get to see European rollers like this. Quite a nice view. They're here for the summer months and then they head far north. As the winter sets in here, around April, they'll be gone. It looks like it's quite a windy day out there. Okay, we're going to go back to Olifants River again. These hippos are still moving about. I just thought we'd take the opportunity to take a look at an unusual bird. Back to the hippos. Still playing around. Be quite nice to see if we can see some more yawning. Maybe some other hippos join the party. Let's see also, let's see if we can get the camera to zoom out just a bit, get a broader look at the river. Maybe there's other hippos around. Donnelly, as far as the European roller, it goes quite far to the far northern reaches of Europe, quite broadly spread. Anywhere from about May, June onwards, you start to see them quite far north. That hippo having a good old rest on the other. Hard work keeping that head up above water all day long. Wow, look at that green. Beautiful afternoon out on the Olifants River today. Blue skies. Just keep panning across here. Haven't seen an elephant anywhere near the river lately. You never know. Looks like the water levels come up again. That sandbank was exposed not too long ago. There's an antelope on the right hand side. I don't know if it's a waterbuck. Quite tricky to see from a distance, but looks like a waterbuck. I wonder if it's going to cross the river. Let's see if the camera goes back to that waterbuck. It would be quite nice to see if it crosses the river. just a little further right. Looks like we might be battling to get the message across there. No, here we go. There's two waterbuck. There's a nice male on the right and female on the left. Don't look like they're going to cross the river. Quite happy feeding on the edges there. Also shining beautifully in the sunlight. Let's see if we can get the camera to go back towards the hippos one more time before we go and have a look at a different camera. While we wait for the camera to go across there, let's go across to Tau. There's some wonderful zebra activity, zebra, wildebeest, and for now, a lone impala. Also a beautiful day out there. So Tau's about 200-300 kilometers to the west of the Olifants River. And also quite far north in South Africa. Looks like across the board the rains have moved off for now. Animals enjoying the sunshine. Glad you got them there, Donnelly. Look out for them in winter. A nice crocodile there. I was wondering where the crocs were as well. Looks like red-billed teals. I've seen a bit more crocodile activity as the waterholes dried up a bit. I think 2 nights ago there was one scouring these shallows. I don't know if you remember, toward the end of winter or the dry season, they were very successful at catching catfish. Nice to see them again. Lots of wildebeest, zebra. Donnelly, your question about waterbuck and when do they give birth? They don't really have a set time of year like impala. They're one of the few that actually have a sort of organized rut, if you like. Most animals will have peaks in the summer months to coincide with the rain. Although something like a waterbuck that does spend a lot of its time along more permanent river edges and that sort of thing, you can see waterbuck youngsters in the middle of winter. It's not that common. They certainly would have a spike now, sort of December, January, February, maybe March. The wildebeest also, actually, by the way, would also mostly have their rut in June, July to coincide with the births, not dissimilar to the impala around January, February. It's also area dependent. Down south we have sort of quite definite rains, December, January, February. You go to East Africa, they do have their main rainy season also around January, February. But otherwise, many of the other antelope like zebra or other animals like zebra, you can see their foals throughout the year. Beautiful herd of zebra all the way across. Wow. Oh, look at that. Lots of them. Some heading off, some arriving. Busy place to be. Again, beautiful late afternoon sunlight. Before we lose too much of the lights, I want to just go across to some of the other cameras, just have a good look around. We're going to go across to Nkoropan quickly. I don't see much going on there, but I would like to have a good look around just in case. Sounds like something's at the waterhole. We'll get the camera to go across there. Might be elephants. Just love the concept of hearing stuff from these cameras, all the birds, animals at the waterhole. Yesterday there was some Inyala alarm calling. We didn't see the predator that they were calling at, but it does fuel the imagination. I'm sure the camera will get there soon enough. You hear that? That does sound like elephant. Let's see when it gets there. Oh, it's nothing. It's strange. Definitely heard something. It's the phantom drinker. It could be the water pump pushing water into the waterhole. Anyway, it's always good to check it out. You can hear the swallows calling in the background. Lots of wind today. Okay, that's fine. We're going to go across to Rosie's Pan where we haven't been yet. And then I'm going to share some of the highlight videos with you before we go back to the live. Donnelly, the sound is really special. And at Tau at the moment, the sound's down. It's always something to work on, but the cameras where there is sound, it's almost, I don't know if it's one of my favorite aspects. And it's as we pan through here, have a good listen out. There's always the sound of a white-browed scrub robin coming from the thicket. Beautiful afternoon sunlight. Great sunset today. Doesn't look like anyone's home today here yet anyways. So I'd like to go across to one of the videos taken yesterday. If we can't see the elephant now, I'll show you what happened yesterday. This beautiful big herd of elephants came through for a drink at Nkora. It's always such a treat to see them coming through, loving the water, all ages. Beautiful big female there, great condition. Let's say she's somewhere in her maybe late 30s, maybe going on to 40 or so, sort of midlife, perfect condition. You can see a lot of the females are secreting quite heavily from the temporal glands, that wet patch, that dark area behind the eye. Usually has to do with levels of stress, but that not necessarily sort of a danger or anything, but also when it gets really warm. It's very typical to see that in the summer months. When you see all of them, see there's another female doing, secreting quite heavily as well. Some of the youngsters are doing it as well. You might find it's got to do with the heat. Sometimes when females do come into estrus, they do secrete from the temporal gland a bit more. There's essentially lots of pheromones being released there, good for communication. If you see the big bulls, a very thick wet patch behind the eye, typically in must, it's something you should watch out for, especially if you're on foot or in close proximity. Rather get out of its animal space. They're on heat, can be tricky customers. Where that elephant's drinking from, that's where the freshwater source is coming from, and I think that's what we were hearing on the live cam. Lots of little ones, some of them under a year old. Just a beautiful scene, coming in for a quick drink and slowly moving off for a feed in the woodland. There's another really nice scene I thought I'd like to share with you. As these elephants start to feed. This time there was a beautiful clip taken at Tembe. Just this group of Inyalas, just all of them in perfect condition, beautiful color, very peaceful scene. The soft call of the emerald spotted wood dove in the background. The typical sounds and sights of Tembe National Park. These Inyalas, we get to see them quite a lot here. We'll go back to the live cam shortly and see if that youngster's still around, but there are lots of Inyala in this area. They thrive here and don't really have much in the way of competition from kudus or bushbuck, but you don't actually get to see them that often elsewhere. And after all the good rains this season, they're all in perfect condition. Beautiful stripes down the side, wonderful spots on the rumps. So these are mostly females. There was a male in the picture. He's quite different. He's gray and obviously has horns, but his coloration is quite different. There he comes. Look at that. Looks like a different animal. There's the second one. These are relatively young, maybe 2 or 3 years of age. They're not quite in their full adulthood. There's a slightly bigger one. Shaggy coats the males have. Okay, those are wonderful scenes from a couple of days ago. We've crossed back over now live. We're back at Tembe. And I just wanted to have a recap and another look around and see if that young Inyala has either moved off or with any luck found its parent. Let's just give the cameras a bit of time to respond, see if they can start moving around, give us an idea of what's happening. We'll also have a listen out for that bird. If you hear it again, the one you were looking, asking about. So there's the emerald spotted wood dove. That I can hear is quite a common or constant call. Lots of chattering from the various weavers. Red-eyed doves calling. There's also some dark-capped bulbuls. You'll need to write these names down, and on the apps or these days on Google you can pick out the sound and then you'll have a picture to the sound you're hearing. They're all really beautiful, all of them. No sign of that young Inyala. Interesting, there's also no sign of the wildebeest either. Pure speculation and just the way my mind thinks. Maybe the lions came and chased them all off. Okay, well, we'll come back before the end of the show just in case there's an update, but definitely recommend keeping an eye out here. See if the Inyala comes back, or the lions have been spending time in this area. You never quite know. So there's another clip I'd like to share with you that was taken just the other day, seeing as we spent a bit of time watching the hippos in the water. They're not the only ones that enjoy a full body wallow. There's a big buffalo bull who also happens to have a single oxpecker on its back. Seems to be the thing to do with animals in the water. But this is a great example of a big buffalo bull. Some of you may have heard the term the Daga boys. Daga is mud in many local languages, Zulu, Shangaan, and they're typically covered in mud. These old males that haven't necessarily been kicked out of herds, but as they've done with their breeding lifespan, around 35, depending on competition in particular herd, but in their later years, they tend to do their own thing. They don't follow the herds, constantly moving. And they tend to lie up in these water holes or mud wallows. They don't need to cover too much ground. But they are the biggest of the buffalo. I'm not sure he gives us a good facial view, but you can see his big horn structure. So both male and females have horns, but the males have that big helmet-like structure in the middle called the boss, and he would have used that to fight for breeding rights over females. But right now, he's very happy. He's content with just sitting in the middle of Rosie's pan. Pretty safe in there. These are often, although huge animal, up to 800 odd kgs, these are often the buffalo that do get targeted by lions. Not easy as an individual lion, but as prides. They manage to wear these animals down eventually, although we've all seen, I'm sure, videos where the tables turn, where the big bulls and the big buffalo actually kill the lion. So it does happen that way around, but as these bulls get older, they might have some old wounds. They become, relatively speaking, easy targets, essentially easy targets for lots of food. But this fellow actually looks to me like he's still in really good condition. I think if I was a pride of lions, I'd think twice. Pleasure, Darren. Glad you're enjoying the shows. Nice to have you with us. Okay, well, as this buffalo enjoys his time, I just wanted to go back to the hippos before we start closing up on the show today. Just love this scene. The shadows coming in. I know we're still pretty much in the middle of summer. It's pretty crazy to think we're coming to the end of January already. But as the months wear on, you'll see these shadows getting longer and longer. The afternoon light and early morning light gets softer. Wonderful time of year in the bush. So these hippos are quite happy where they are right now. Typically, they'll wait until the sun's gone down and they start making their way out. And like I say, right now they don't need to cover too much ground. We've actually seen some great footage of them feeding right here on the riverbanks. In the dry winter months or in drier areas, they can cover huge distances to get to grass. Not very fast, but certainly have a great level of endurance. Okay, while they're still doing their thing there, I just want to show you. I've got two snapshot photos taken over the last couple of days. The first one is quite an interesting one. It's something one doesn't get to see that often. It's not that clear, but it is a gecko, and I think it's a Wahlberg's velvet gecko. You see it's got quite a thick body, not a triangular head. And some of you may have seen them if you've actually been to the bush. They're really quite large, but it's always good to keep them around. One of their specialities, as far as food's concerned, is cockroaches. Sounds terrible, but quite handy to have around. I just thought this photograph was quite an interesting one of a creature one doesn't get to see that often. Again, if anyone has a reptile guide or the book or the app, you should take a look at them. They vary in colors. If anyone's ever seen one and possibly caught one or felt one, their skin is quite velvety. They're really good looking as long as you don't mind looking at reptiles. That's a velvet gecko. There's another great photograph taken 2 days ago, also at Naledi Dam, of quite a different animal. I'm sure also quite a velvet feel to its fur. But this is a beautiful photograph of a young leopard. Yesterday we had a look at the video, how a mother and its youngster came down for a drink. And Black Jack managed to capture this snapshot perfectly, just looking straight into the camera. A beautiful shot of a young leopard at Naledi Dam. Just having one last look around here at Olifants. Waterbucks seem to have moved off. See the hippos in the background. Yeah, that's a great comment, Margaret. Yeah, when they have eggs, they walk on the glass. We're talking about the geckos now, folks. They walk on the glass or the light. You can actually see them inside the body. They are quite transparent. This is a strange animal. It's always quite exciting to have a good look at. Right, folks, we're going to finish off at Cat Eye Pan. You'll see the cameras start to move in the direction of sunset. Looks like it could be quite an interesting one. Maybe those clouds will pick up the light as the sun goes further down. I'm going to leave you here at Cat Eye with the setting sun. Folks, thanks so much for joining me. It's always wonderful to share nature with everybody around the world. Some of the things we get to see here are really quite special, especially in the times that we're in. We can't get out there. The fact that we can hear things and see things, look at these sunsets, birds flying by. It's truly quite a privilege. Russell will be back in for the morning show tomorrow. As always, I can only encourage you to keep watching the cameras, keep taking snapshots, and I look forward to catching up with you on Monday morning. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.